My name is Michael McCormick. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Education Services for the Val Verde Unified School District. And tonight, we're going to take some time to explain two different things. One is called Local Control Funding Formula. It's a new kind of model of how schools will receive their funding. And the other one is called LCAP. That's the Local Control Accountability Plan. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to introduce some dignitaries that are here tonight. We have from our governing board in the Val Verde Unified School District, first off, our president, Mr. Michael Vargas, right here. We appreciate him being here. We also have our clerk of the board right here, Ms. Suzanne Stotler. Thank you for joining us tonight. And also board member, Ms. Marla Kirkland. Thank you for being here. And we also have many of our principals and other staff here tonight just to support the event. And I want to say a big thank you to my team in Ed Services for helping to put all this on. And I want you to know that we've got amazing direction from our Board of Education, and our board does an outstanding job for the students in this community. So again, we appreciate the board being here to support this event. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services and our Chief Business Official, Mr. Darren Waters.
Good evening. I'm going to take you through a few slides tonight, talk a little bit about some of the financial components of the new program. Maybe I won't, maybe I will. There we go. So a little bit about alphabet soup, because we're in education and we like to have acronyms, so we've got our own words here. So our own alphabet soup, just for your own terminology things here. We've got Local Control Funding Formula, which is LCFF. That's the main, that was legislation that was adopted last year, Assembly Bill 97. And within that was also something called a Local Control and Accountability Plan. These are the two main components tonight. I'm going to be talking a lot about LCFF. Mr. McCormick will come back up in a few minutes to talk a little bit more about the Local Control and Accountability Plan. And the State Board of Education is SBE. Riverside County Office of Ed is our local fiscal oversight group, and they'll also have some oversight responsibilities that Mike will go into later. And then our Parent Advisory Committee, the PAC. So those are a couple acronyms for you to refer to later tonight. So what are we talking about here on the school California School Finance? This new system is more of a needs-based formula. Traditionally, in an older system that we had, the dollars came in based on ADA, and every child was treated exactly the same K-12. The money we received from the state assumed that it cost the same amount to educate a kindergartner as it did a 12th grader, and an 8th grader, and a 6th grader, and a 9th grader. This new formula makes some distinctions here, and I'll talk about those in a moment. It also provides, and the big thing for tonight is local decision authority. So we've got we're soliciting input. The most important thing tonight, folks, at the end of the night, we're going to ask you for some comments, some written comments. We've got a form. Mike will go into that in a little bit in his presentation. We'll pass this out at the end. The most important thing tonight is your feedback. We really are looking for that feedback from you. And really, this is the first time that I've had to create a budget that aligns with all our educational goals. Yeah, there's components of this, components of that lined up, but never did I really have to have everything totally aligned. We have to do that now. And we actually will present those to the school board for adoption in June, side by side. Those two documents must go together. I talked about the fiscal oversight and the accountability oversight we have from RCOE. They're going to evaluate that over the summer and make sure they do match. So LCFF, Local Control Funding Formula, does distinguish that it does cost a little bit more money to educate certain students that do require additional resources. And so we've identified, or excuse me, the state legislature has identified English language learners. It costs obviously a little bit more to educate. Our low-income students require a little bit more money to educate, as well as some foster youth. Those are the three areas that we are going to, and I'll talk about the augmentations a little bit, but we get augmentations to our funding for students that follow in those categories. Everything else, we've broken up by some grade levels, some grade span designations that I'll go over in a little bit. We'll receive a base grant. That base grant applies to every child based on their grade spans, and then we'll have these supplemental concentration grants that will come in for these other groups. So what did it look like before, and what does it look like now? Well, we had something called our base revenue limit before, and I talked a little bit about that we got just a lump sum dollar amount per kid, regardless of where they came in at as far as their grades, or grade level. We had 40 categorical programs. Now, the categorical programs were fantastic if it was something we needed. As the chief business official, there were times where we were given money for a categorical program, and you thought, boy, this is really nice. This is kind of an add-on luxury here. We really need some help on this side, but I couldn't use the dollars for that. We were limited in what we could do. It's called restricted dollars. We were restricted on how we could use certain dollars. That's going away. So we're going from 40 categorical programs to something called supplemental and concentration grants that are tied to those 3 unique student groups, the low-income, our EL students, and the foster youth. The accountability was totally separate from the funding. We had some requirements, some legal requirements we had to follow, and that was fine. All our audit guidelines, different pieces. We had to make sure we were spending it legally and appropriately. But now we've got to make sure our expenditures align with what our community wants and what we think is important for the kids of Val Verde Unified. Not what's important to the kids in Riverside or Corona or Sacramento or LA, but what's important to the kids in Val Verde. So what remains unchanged? Well, I mean, we still got, and I wouldn't have this job without having the ability to have an audit. Right? We've got to have financial audits to make sure we're accountable to what we're doing. Compliance with the Williams Act. The Williams Act requires textbooks. It requires properly credentialed teachers, facilities in good repair. So there's a lot of things with the Williams Act. That's still intact. That doesn't go away. We still have those requirements put on us to do. School accountability report cards. If you've been online to different school districts, and each school must have a report card that they're required by law to put certain things in there to communicate to the community about their program. And then the federal funding, planning, and accountability requirements. So any of our title programs, if you've heard of Title I, Title II, Title III, all that stuff stays intact. Carl Perkins, our vocational education money, that stuff's all intact. That's federal dollars. The only thing we're dealing with that's a little bit different are the state dollars. So how does it work? Well, I'll walk you through a brief scenario here in just a minute, but basically we're going to receive a base grant for every kid. If a student is identified in one of the 3 categories, English language learner, foster youth, or a low socioeconomic status kid as measured by our free and reduced lunch counts, we're going to get a supplemental grant. That supplemental grant is going to be equal to 20% of the base grant. So whatever the base grant is, we're going to get a 20% add-on to the dollars coming to the district. The next one is called a concentration grant. So the state realized that every district has students that require a little extra, but some districts have a lot of students that require a lot of extra. And so if your population of those unduplicated counts of those 3 areas exceeds 55%, we get something called a concentration grant for every kid above 55% that is equal to 50% of the base grant. I'll show you the math here in a second. Really graphically and visually what this means, you remember me talking about the restricted funds. I want you to not focus on the blue, but focus on the red. In the old days on the left, our hands were tied with the restricted dollars. They could go only for those programs. And like I said, there were some great things in there that we had to do, but there were some things that really may not have been really applicable to Val Verde. May have worked in Riverside, may have worked in Corona, may have worked in Temecula. Didn't work in Val Verde. So now we're able to free those up. And if you can look on the one on the right, it's very hard to see, but there is restricted. There's a little red sliver about 12 o'clock there. That's about what the restricted looks like now. So it's a much smaller amount. So the big difference is the amount of money that we're able to free up and do with what we think is important, not what Sacramento thought was important. And so really we're looking at the yellow area, the supplemental concentration grants, and how to best use those for the educational program of the students in Val Verde Unified. So as the chief business official, I got to have numbers on the slide. I can't get out of a presentation without doing something with numbers. So this is how the formula works in a very quick snapshot. You can see the grade spans. K3, the state recognizes that there's an additional piece there for K3 kids, 4-6, and 7-8, and then 9-12. Look at the dollar amount on the adjusted base grant on the top line. Do I have a laser here? Nope, that's not what I wanted. I don't want that either. Well, pretend I had a laser and I was pointing at the box right underneath 912 on the top right, 8635. That's how much, you want to take that down? Thank you. So 8638 is how much they're giving us on a base grant for our high school kids. They recognize that the high school program costs more. You have athletics, you have ASB, you have the leadership program, you have the AVIDS program, we have our much richer and more expensive science programs, you have our career and technical education programs. It costs more to run a high school. Then we have a supplemental grant that comes in at an additional 20%. The concentration grant's a 50% kicker for every ADA above 50, every kid that comes in above 55%. And then we're a target where they think we will be, where they want us to be in the year 2021, is that second to last row. Where we're at today is that bottom line. And we're working, and the goal is this is a 7-year implementation period. It's going to take some time to get there, but every year the state is committed to trying to close this gap to get us to that funding level that has been identified in the legislation. Oh, and our eligible students is about 84%. So the number of students in Val Verde Unified that are either unduplicated counts. So if you're an English language learner who's also a low socioeconomic status kid who's also a foster kid, we can only count you one time. So it's the unduplicated count of those 3 areas. So every kid that is an English language learner, foster youth, or low socioeconomic status, in our district, that's 84% of our population. That's a significantly high number. So we have a large concentration in Val Verde Unified. So we look at the concentration grant, that amount, that 50% add-on, we get that for the difference between 84% and 55%, which is 29. So 29% of our kids, we're getting that extra 50% on. Is the way that calculation works. I'll be around later tonight if you want to walk through the calculation, if you've got questions on the numbers. So, what does this all mean to us? Well, this is a unique time in education, in California education, because we're now, for the first time, we got that true local control. We've been asking for local control for years, and now we're getting that. It's going to be very important that we get great input from our communities, we understand what the needs are, and then we're able to focus those dollars on those needs and do what's best for the students of Val Verde Unified. It's a unique opportunity for us. It's a pretty exciting time in my career because I'm on the cutting edge of this thing and being in the first year of implementation. It's pretty exciting. So I'll be around Mr. McCormick's going to come up here and talk now on the LCAP piece. If you got financial questions about it or anything like that, I will be around at the end. Thank you. Mr. McCormick?
Anybody need a stretch break? We're doing okay? All right, let's zip into the next piece of this then. So, while we have a lot of flexibility to decide what's going to be best for our students in the Val Verde Unified School District, the state has given us what they call 8 priorities. And it's within those 8 priorities that kind of guides our thinking. And so I've got a couple of slides up here around the 8 priorities. And so the first one we'll go through kind of quickly, and it's just to give you something to kind of look at and get those 8 priorities get those in your brain. So here we go. The first one is student achievement. So what are the things that we're going to think about in terms of student achievement? Next one is student engagement. Okay, the state believes that's important, and so do we. Next one, parental involvement. Okay, goes without saying, right? Next one is course access. Implementation of the Common Core standards. This is, you're probably hearing a lot in the news about Common Core standards, why we need Common Core standards, why they're important. Next one is basic services. Just kind of a quick introduction on that. Are the buildings in good repair and maintained? Is there sufficient instructional materials or textbooks for our students? Those kinds of things. Okay, school climate. Do the students feel safe? Those kinds of questions. Okay, and then other student outcomes. This is one where we get to decide, is there something else that's not in the 7 that we think is important that we'd like to measure and track? Okay. So one of the parts of this is for us to be really transparent in what we're doing and to reach out to our community. And so you see on the slide there, there's a lot of different groups that we'll be reaching out to. Our Board of Education, parent groups in our community. You probably see DLAC up there. That's the District Language Advisory Committee. ELAC, GATE, our Gifted and Talented Education program. Let me look up there and see some more. Our Career and Technical Education, our staff, both of our classified and teachers organizations. And so these are all the different groups that we'll be reaching out to collect input for what's important for our community. Okay? And here we talk about the process. And so right now I want to be very clear, we have no LCAP. There is no local control accountability plan for the Val Verde Unified School District because we need to receive your input before we can write the plan. And so one of the things that we'll be doing at this meeting tonight is receiving your input via survey, and then we'll also be taking some questions and answering the questions. That'll be the last part of the night. So we're reaching out to the community. We want to receive your input, and somewheres around March, after we've received the input, we'll actually then write the plan and then bring the plan back out for review and comment from the community, just to make sure that we've done our job, we've listened well, and we're on the right track. Okay? And then ultimately, this plan, along with our budget, will go to the June board meeting for approval. And so that's kind of the process, and we have a slide to show that. So what is the oversight for this plan? Well, our plan has to be approved at the June board meeting, and then it will go to the Riverside County Office of Education. The Riverside County Office of Education will either approve the plan or send the plan back with questions. And so we're just kind of highlighting there what happens. By October 8th, the county will tell us where we're at with this thing. And they'll be able to provide some technical assistance should we need it. Now on the other side, what is the SPI? That's the Superintendent of Public Instruction. If we write goals and we don't meet those goals and we miss some of the goals, there's some consequences in there for us. So one of the things that I think is important to note is we want to make goals that are measurable, and we want the goals to be challenging but attainable. And so we'll talk through what that means in a few more slides. Okay, so here we go again. Here's the 8 areas. Now the next part of the presentation is going to be taking each of those areas, and I thought it'd be a good idea to share if we have data right now that we're tracking in each of those 8 areas, and to just kind of give you some context for how we're doing as compared to the other 23 school districts in Riverside County. So we'll start. First one at the top, student achievement. And we're just going to kind of go in order. So, whoopsie daisy, what am I doing here? Okay, so student achievement, here we are. So here's some of the indicators that we're currently tracking and that we know. One of them is called the API, or the Academic Performance Index. The goal for every district and school in the state of California is to have an API of 800. So you can see that we've exceeded that goal, not by much, but we've exceeded it. And as compared to the 23 school districts in Riverside County, we rank 6th best. Okay? Here's another indicator that we track. How many of our students are leaving having completed what we call the A to G requirements? Those are the requirements that students need to be able to enter university. And so 30% of our ninth graders are on track, and 30% of our students are on track for that. That places us ninth out of the 23 school districts in the county. Okay? And then our percentage of reclassified English learners, 11.3%, 10th in the county. Proficiency rates, 47% in English, 61. We didn't have a comparison in the county to show us where we're at. Advanced placement. These are the very rigorous college level courses that students can take in high school. And if they pass the advanced placement test, they can actually earn college credit for those courses while they're in high school. And so we pulled some statistics. The California average, 64% of the students in California are passing advanced placement classes. At Rancho Verde, 67% are passing, and at Citrus Hill, 54% are passing. So we have one of our comprehensive high schools a little bit above the average, and other one of our high schools a little bit below the average. And college preparedness as determined by the early assessment, EAP. You can see here that 14% of our students are declared college ready in English and 9% in math. And that puts us right about the center of the districts in Riverside County. And so for me, I would look at this data and I would say, doing pretty good, doing okay, we need to work on this one. And so that's why we're kind of providing this information for you, so you can see. The last thing we'd want to do is have you say, oh, the API is terrible, when we're actually doing pretty good. Do we really want to focus a lot of dollars in that particular area when we're doing pretty good? We'd rather focus those dollars in an area where we're not satisfied with our student performance. Okay? Student engagement. Here's some of the things we currently monitor. Okay, our attendance rate, 96%. Our high school dropout rate, 7.7%. That puts us 5th best in the county. And our high school graduation rate, right now we're at 89.5%, making us 4th best in the county. As a matter of fact, the goal for districts in the state of California and districts in the nation is 90% graduation rate. So you can see on the graduation rate, we're just 0.5% away from the nationwide goal on where we'd like to be. But then we have to ask ourselves the question, is that good enough? Or is there more that we can do? What is acceptable? And so those are questions that we need to receive your input on. And I will tell you, I think this 96% rate and I think that a lot of that starts with our teachers. I think we deliver a product where our students want to come to school and the community realizes the importance of education. And so the students are coming to school on a regular basis, and we do have a pretty high graduation rate. Okay, next area, parent involvement. This is an interesting one. Right now, we don't have any measures in place to track parent involvement. And so this is an area I think we need to spend some time to think, how can we track parent involvement in the district? Some of the things we do right now is if we have a back to school night, we kind of tally the sign-in sheets of all the parents who signed in, and so that's one way of doing it. I think in the age of technology, we might be able to come up with something a little bit better. And I think as I've kind of reflected on this, we want to track parent involvement, but I think we'd also want to know what our parent satisfaction level is. And to me, those are two different things. You can be involved, but are you satisfied with what's happening? And so this is an area that I think requires more exploration for us. Okay, next one, course access. This is kind of an interesting one. You might be familiar with something called No Child Left Behind. Well, in No Child Left Behind, there was a tremendous emphasis on testing. And as a result of that emphasis on testing, in elementary schools, for example, the two main areas that were really important for school grades was language arts and math. So at most of our elementary schools across the nation, students are receiving about 3 hours of language arts, about 2 hours of math, about an hour of science, and maybe a little bit of social studies thrown in if time allows. Almost no music, almost no art, almost no organized physical education. And so this concept of course access, if we really want to give our kids what we call a comprehensive experience, where they're getting exposure to all the different things, then this is something we need to look at. How can we do this to build back in science and social studies and art and music, the things that many of us had exposure to when we were in, elementary school. And so on face value, this seems like, well, of course our students are getting access. I can tell you they're not. And so how do we solve this problem? And the good news is we have a little bit of money to do that. Okay? Implementation of Common Core standards. We're doing a lot in this area. A lot of the work is conceptual. We have a plan. We're in process of communicating that plan. We've got teacher work groups happening. But right now we aren't really measuring our progress of how we're doing, at certain points. And so I believe we're going to get there, but this is an area where I think some additional accountability would be welcomed. Okay. Basic services. This is the one, it's actually based on a lawsuit called the Williams lawsuit, where every year, for example, in this district, we have somebody from the county who comes around, make sure our drinking fountains are functioning, our restrooms are functioning and in good repair, and that supplies are stocked up in the bathrooms. So that's one piece of it. The other piece is every year our Board of Education has to certify that we have enough textbooks for students. Those can be in print form, they can be a digital form, but the students need to have access to a textbook while they're in school and at home. Doesn't mean we have to have 2 sets of textbooks for everybody. It just means that they need to have access one way or another. And so this was not happening in school districts in the state, and that's why this lawsuit was filed, and ultimately the folks who filed it prevailed. This also extends to making sure that we have enough equipment in our science labs, things like that. So I can tell you that in the last 4 years, as a school district, we haven't had any violations in these areas, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't continue to pay attention to this stuff. Okay. Next one, school climate. Suspension rate. Okay, so our suspension rate as of, these numbers are a little dated, so this is as of 2 years ago, was 9%, which made us 19th out of 23 school districts in Riverside County. So that's a very high suspension rate as compared to our neighbors in the county. I can tell you that we noticed this and we already have some work happening. The numbers that are just coming out now from last year is we went from 9% to about 7.3%. I just got those today, and you guys are the first ones to hear that. So we're making some progress downward, and I really give a lot of kudos to our student services who's really looked at this. Our expulsion rate, 0%, making us #1 in the county for the fewest number of expulsions. So we have a high suspension rate, low expulsion rate. Okay, so that's something for us to take a look at. Other student outcomes. Okay. Are there things that we would like to track and monitor that are important as a result of the input that we receive from the community? Okay. This is where we would do that. Okay. Okay. And I'm wondering if, okay. So this just shows us again our API of 803. Wow. We're getting close. Okay, we're coming back online. The folks that are standing in front of the window, I'm wondering if it's blocking the signal, because the computer's actually back there. Sorry to highlight you.
Or low light.
Make a better door than a window. Remember that? Okay. So I think we're on slide 28, if you get that going. So anyways, the next couple of slides was just a reinforcement of some of the areas where we've done pretty well as a district. We're proud of our successes. Our teachers, our administrators, our classified staff, it really is a team effort, including, you know, the students and the parents. And so I think that was, so 6th in the county. This is kind of an interesting one. Each year, the state of California puts out, I think this is what's dying, Garrick, so if you can just press the button up there. But every one of our schools has a similar school ranking of 8, 9, or 10. The scale is from 1 through 10, and so based on similar demographics, if you're doing a really good job as a school with students from around the state that have similar demographics, you get an 8, 9, or a 10 on your similar schools ranking. Every one of our schools in the district has an 8, 9, or a 10. There is, let me tell you the significance of that. There is no other school district in Riverside County that can make that claim. There's only one school district in San Bernardino County that can make that claim. And in that one school district, there's exactly one school. It's a very small district. And so we think, and we're proud of the fact, that with our demographics, we're doing a very nice job. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have room to improve. Okay, let's go next slide. So this one just shows our truancy rate. We have the lowest truancy rate in Riverside County at 9.5%. And this shows the increase in our graduation rate. We talked about that to 89.5%. And this shows you where we stand in the county. You can see there is one charter school in Riverside County. It's the New View Bridge Academy. They have a 100% graduation rate. Isn't that fantastic? That's really good. That's what we want to accomplish, 100% graduation rate. And so we're getting close. We've got to come ahead of Temecula, Murrieta, and Coronel Norco, and we'll be there. So that's our goal. Okay, next slide.